Hey, welcome back to Mike's Diabetes World. Okay, this is take two, by the way. The first one I totally screwed up. 8.8 is saying, the sensor is saying, it's more like 10.6. There's a little bit out in morning calibrations. Here, I'm got zero or fully calibrated. My mouth's not working this morning. As you can see, I had a few more corrections during the night, and my calibration was full. Yes, tomorrow we're going to switch to my new pump. It's the exact same pump with all the exact same features, but this one was a loaner, so I have to send it back. Underneath is what it looked like. I was higher at 4 and have come down. Now, how does this reflect time in range? Time in range is 88%. It's gone down. Above is 9%. I have an appointment with my diabetic nurse next week, March 6th. So below is 3%. Below still within range, not where I really want to be. Average sugar is 7.3%. So, get rid of this arm. Today I want to discuss what happens when I don't want to eat and what happens when diabetics don't want to eat. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. This channel is provided for informational purposes only. Contact your physician for any diagnostic or treatment plan. Okay, so you wake up. It's time to eat. Oh, but you really don't feel like it. Well, let's start with story time. When I was first diagnosed, I had to eat all the time. Well, not all the time. It's kind of like I was always eating. But you got up, you took your insulin. For me, it was an intermediate and a short acting. And I'd take my insulin, and then I'd have to eat. And then in the morning, around 10 o'clock, I had to eat again. And In high school, that was a little troublesome doing. And then noon, I had to eat again. And you had to eat. If you didn't, your blood sugars would drop. And that was not a good thing. Keeping yourself under control meant you had to eat the whole time. You even had to have a bedtime snack. Now, things are a little bit more lenient. With the advent of the pump, these pumps have changed lives for diabetics. Eating has become less important. It's still important for anyone to eat, but if I really don't feel like eating, I don't have to. And there's the big difference. Having insulin being delivered on demand, in which a pump does, alleviates a lot of stress, as where giving insulin and then trying to meet that requirements through the day. That day is a lot of stress. So, where do I sit now? I still have breakfast, lunch, an afternoon snack, dinner, and a bedtime snack. The snacks are pretty well there, especially the afternoon, is pretty well there just to make sure I don't get hungry. Because from noon till dinner time is a big stretch, and sometimes, you're just sitting here, oh God, I'm hungry. And it's not a huge snack, it's only 20 grams of carbs. But nighttime was there just to see how I would do, and also I can't readily get food here through the night. That's the down part of living in a facility, is you can't have fridges in your room full of food. So, there we go. But the important thing is now I don't have to eat. The only time I really have to eat is once I've typed a carbs for meal into my system. At that point, you're committed to eating. But before you type those carbs in, if you're not hungry, it doesn't really matter. If you miss a meal because you're sick, whatever, it's not as much stress. Now, I can remember being sick and sucking on ginger ale all night. That was a pain. So, what do we do? Well, it's a good idea that you're eating some point through the day. Your body does need fuel. And I'm a firm believer on some carbs in the diet. I'm not saying we've gone overboard with carbs, but I do believe carbs still are an important part. Your brain needs carbs to work. And just because, oh yes, not eating carbs is just wonderful. I just lost so much weight not having carbs. I don't think does the body good. Processed foods are just loaded with sugar. And sugar may be the actual carbs, but they're not always the best. Before I moved in here, I had carbs pretty much every day. I got to the point where I would be having ravioli for breakfast and lunch, and I'd spice it up with what else? Chili, I think it was. But a high carb. That was just out of necessity. It wasn't that I wanted to. And I was spread very thin with food, and I probably put on extra weight because of it. But I was limited in what I could do in cooking and everything else. Keeping your body fueled is important. Anorexia and diabetes, or type 1 diabetes, do not play a huge role. While I do believe in carbs, excess carbs and that I don't agree with. Keeping your carb count lower helps. It helped control sugars for me. But just to getting the pump to skip meals all the time isn't the best feature. In reality, smaller, lower carb meals are probably the best. We need to look at more leafy, but that's another video. As today, we're discussing if I want to miss a meal, I don't have to eat. And when I was on shots, thinking back at it on how much of a dread it was, because a lot of times I was pretty good, not great. I would take my morning shot. It kind of was ingrained because I began at 1 shot a day. My afternoon shot was less. I would get going. You come home from work, you'd relax. I'd have dinner, and then all of a sudden I'd feel like crap. Because I would forget to take the shot. Now, again, this is eliminated. Now, if your doctor hasn't talked to you about the pump, it may not be the best fit for you. So, you can always ask about it, but just thinking that, oh, I'm going to go on the pump, I'm not going to eat, I'm going to lose all this weight, and life is going to be grand. you're going to need fuel. I think a lot of pressure has been put on people to lose weight just because, oh, it's the in thing. I don't really believe that living like a stick is the best. Being overweight isn't the best either. There is a medium. And I'd say you should be eating a well-balanced diet. But if you miss a meal, or the whole idea is the pump is set at an amount so that you could have a pretty normal blood sugar. Now with the 780, it just gives me the pressure to move on. So where do we go? We have to keep the 80-20 rule. I would say 80% of the time you're eating sort of sensibly. 20% of the time, maybe you could have a cheat day, you could miss a meal if your pump's set up correctly, and your endocrinologist can come up with a test to ensure. Don't just decide I'm not going to eat. And a friend ended up in the hospital because he had how do we put this? He was ill. And he found he couldn't eat. And back then he wasn't taking his insulin. So how do we make sure everything is working correctly? Getting back to the story, I don't know what that statement was, but he found he could miss a meal and be fine. So when he got well and got back to his life, he took his shot, and then at lunchtime, I don't feel like eating. He didn't eat, and he ended up in crisis. If you're on multiple daily injections where you have a long acting insulin, and then you give yourself insulin at meal times or for correction, don't forget to eat, because that is where it's important. Insulin pumps are what I call insulin on demand. Gives a better feature in that everything is short acting, so that you're able to give insulin for a meal. If you don't want to eat, the insulin isn't there. But you still have to eat sometimes during the day. And with that, remember, eating is fine. If you're on the pump, discuss with your doctor if you want to miss a meal. Shots, you're going to have to eat. Unless your doctor comes up with something new. Your body does need some carbs. People who say, oh, I'm on a carb-free diet, aren't on a carb-free diet because their brain needs carbs. What they're truthfully saying is they're on a lower carb diet or not processed carb diet. Anyway, I hope you're having a great day, and we'll talk again soon. Bye now. My email is mikesdiabetesworld@gmail.com. mikesdiabetesworld@gmail.com.